Well, we finally had the opportunity to hear from Kirby Smart as the Dogs spring practice and scrimmages get underway. And I don't know if it was just Kirby being Kirby, the coach in him just wanting to send a message and let his players know that they haven't accomplished anything yet. But I was pretty interested in the comments he had about Georgia not necessarily having the discipline that you would want to see. And I know it's only the first scrimmage, but I mean, that's not something you can really gloss over if it is indeed something that Kirby noticed as a differentiator from this team this early in the process.
I wouldn't say differentiator because he literally started the press conference by saying, been here 6, 7, 8 springs or whatever he said. And it seems like always. And then he kind of paused a little bit. And then it was like, didn't tackle well, didn't play with good discipline. Had some penalties, had some, operational issues. So it sounded like it was kind of more of the same for first spring scrimmage to me. I'll let Palmer weigh in. I don't know what he thought.
No, I mean, I completely agree there that it was like a, sense of, hey, I mean, he's been through a first spring scrimmage a million times, not just at Georgia, but at Alabama, at LSU, and on down the line. He understands what and also the first fall scrimmage is typically not the cleanest of them because it's the first time that you're going live, completely tackling to the ground, all that. And I think for especially the young guys that you've got, Georgia's got several of them. There's some jitters going into Sanford Stadium for the first time. So, I don't think that there's any reason to be concerned that Kirby was concerned. Or Kirby was frustrated. I would also say probably wasn't. I mean, the weather was not the best for that air. For what they want to accomplish. It was very windy on Saturday.
Super windy.
So I was a little bit surprised that we didn't hear about that. And hey, trying to throw the ball around, see what these quarterbacks are capable of. I was surprised that we didn't hear some about the weather and the wind.
Yeah, well, if they had the opportunity to talk about the weather in regard to Georgia's quarterbacks, again, I don't know if this was coach speak, making a mountain out of a molehill just to keep the competition interesting. But from what y'all heard, it seems like things, at least in that scrimmage, might have been a little bit tighter than what the competition seemed like it could be up till this point. That was the first scrimmage, first opportunity for Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, and Gunnar Stockton to really show what they were all about. And maybe it was the jitters. Maybe Carson Beck kind of knows he's the guy. Maybe Brock Vandagriff is finally able to push a little bit. But I did find that interesting to hear that, all three of the guys didn't, no one necessarily separated themselves between the hedges this spring.
The last thing I want to do, ever, is to hurt Georgia's cause on something, right? Like I think Georgia wants to do this. It goes back to all right, well, if they let me watch a whole practice, would I go tell you every formation they ran and stuff like that? No, I wouldn't, because I don't want, we're not out there for that. I'd tell you who I thought looked good and all that stuff, but I wouldn't be like, well, I saw this one formation the most and this and that. I don't want to hurt Georgia's cause. I never do. I mean, that's just not what you do as a beat writer. Is you want to report the truth and you want to do those things, but you don't want to mess them up. So with that said, I'm not trying to mess Georgia up here, but at no point are we going to get a true and accurate picture if either of these three guys. I mean, Gunnar Stockton could be the next Joe Montana in the eyes of the coaching staff. They'll never relay that to us. Kirby's never going to say that about he wouldn't say that if he had 10 quarterbacks on campus, much less trying to keep 3 on campus. And that's the way this thing is, man, is, if you want to go by the comments, it's going to be tight for a very, very long time. Get used to it. If you want to go by the performances, well, we don't really see them. So we don't have a lot of context into, who threw what interception or who threw how many touchdown passes. This quarterback thing, and I hate to say this because it's probably bad for business,
if you're saying it's good for business, straight from Jay Crow's lips to God's ears.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if the good Lord listens to me, but I will say this. don't pay attention to what you hear in the quarterback battle. I mean, we're going to try to give you something and the most we got, but this quarterback situation, unless you're there watching it with your own eyes, unless you're a McGill Society person or what you see at G-Day or whatever, and we're going to tell you what we think when we see them. Long time, man. Just get ready. This is a long road, and they want Gunnar Stockton and Brock Vandegrift and Carson Beck to be engaged and on campus for as long as they can get them there. And it's going to take some time before we start to hear about who may start. We may not even hear about it a whole lot. Start maybe who's taking first team reps 2 Wednesdays before the season starts. Maybe. I mean, that's about the best I can do for you.
See, and I will chime in. I did think that Kirby's comments on the specific, I completely agree with you there, Jake, on what he said about the specific players and the specific individuals, those 3 competitors for the job. But I did think his comments that he had on what it is he's looking for in the quarterback position, what he's looking for with these guys during the scrimmage, I thought that was some of the most honest speak we've heard from Kirby about that. And maybe it's not, we haven't had to ask it because we haven't had a quarterback battle that we've been following. But I think that it was very honest what he said about, hey, we have so many talented skill players on this offense. And this is a quarterback driven offense where you've got to make the right decisions. And it's more about making the right decisions and not messing things up for everyone else that's really talented around you, more so than it is about you going out there and making a play with your physical skill set.
Yeah, I mean, this is obvious, of course, but Kirby making the remark that they're not really going to know anything about any of these guys until they can get hit, until they can, take some actual physical contact from a defense, and you're just not going to get that until this fall. But that makes me wonder. I mean, none of these guys have faced that ever. And I'm not saying that Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift can't do that or can't take it, but we've never really seen them have to step up and have that on the line. They've never had any kind of stakes on the line. And I wrote about this over the weekend that Georgia's 2023 schedule, it's no April Fool's joke. We look at it and everyone is hating on the Dogs for this week's schedule, but y'all know that there's going to be a team on there, probably from the SEC, probably not Georgia Tech, if I had to guess, probably not UT Martin either. But there's going to be a team that looks like, mentally you look at them and it's an easy dub, but they're going to give Georgia more than they want, and they're going to give Georgia more than fans expect. And that, at the end of the day, that's a good thing for Georgia if they want to have a successful postseason. Just look at the Missouri game this past year. That's the exact kind of game I'm thinking of. But Carson Beck hasn't had to do that. Brock Vandegrift hasn't had to do that. And you're not going to learn that this spring. And I think that's ultimately what you look at in this quarterback competition. That's the big X factor that Kirby legitimately can't answer right now.
If you go back to the Mark Richt days, there would be some stakes on the line, some literal STEAKS on the line come G-Day, because it would be steaks or beanie weenies.
It still is that way.
What's that?
It still is that way.
They still do it that way? Okay, yeah, awesome.
Kirby's talked about that before.
So there will be some stakes on the line for that one, but not the stakes you're talking about, not wins and losses, which what really matters. And Wes, man, I could not agree with you more on that. You've got Georgia fans out there who think, oh, man, they are going to just road grade the schedule. Somebody's going to rise up. Somebody's going to rise up and beat them. They're going to be a little better than you thought they were going to be. And they're going to give Georgia a little bit of a challenge. And it may not even be somebody that's better than you thought they were going to be. Like you mentioned, Missouri. Dude, it is so hilarious to me how many Georgia fans have forgotten about that game. Like it didn't happen. Like it was never close. Like there wasn't a chance Georgia was going to lose that game. I'll tell you something, dude. That fourth quarter started, I thought Georgia was going down.
I did too.
And listen, you can act like you didn't think Georgia had a chance to lose that game. You're a liar. You are an absolute bald-faced liar, because there was nothing that gave you an indication before that Georgia was going to come back and win that game. And Kirby, like Kirby said all year long, be at your best when your best was needed. And that was the case for the offensive line and for the running backs and for Kenny McIntosh and Dejon Edwards and those guys. And Georgia did come through and they won that game. But somebody's going to come through and they're going to smack the champion in the mouth. They're going to bloody the champion's nose, and the champion's going to have to pick themselves off the mat a little bit and land some haymakers of their own. And I mean, I do think the schedule is favorable. There's no doubt about it. But get ready to get hit and hit hard, because everybody's going to be coming.
Yeah, Tennessee is the matchup on the schedule that jumps out to everybody probably as being the most challenging. But like, I look at Ole Miss, and I know it's between the hedges, and Georgia's got some magic right now in Athens, as good championship teams do. They just don't lose at home. But I mean, it could be Ole Miss, it could be Kentucky. Like, you don't know, and you scoff at me now because you're like, Kentucky, they suck. But like, you just don't know. Yeah, Rhett Womack, I've always hated when they had to go to Columbia, Missouri. I mean, we've talked about this before. After that game, they've had some pucker factor games there for sure. William Smith, good chance Georgia finishes third in the East. That's what we like to hear. That's the 6-6, 7-5 Georgia narrative that Dogs fans want the team to hear about. Dogs blow out Tennessee, according to Uncle Glenn Hartley.
We need to get Bill Smith going back to slapping Chris Rock or something. He's better at that than he is predicting. I mean, listen, if Georgia may not win the East, I won't sit there and say you're stupid for thinking that, but third is outrageous.
Rhett Womack with an interesting one, though. No one's really talking about Hugh Freeze and Auburn. That first road trip for Georgia is the Kirby Smart Hugh Freeze reunion. Look, I'm not saying that that's going to be the game, but the storylines will be aplenty going into that one.
Kerryon Johnson ain't walking through that door.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at Hugh Freeze's history against Kirby Smart's defenses, though, and I can see where people would think there's maybe not a window open there, maybe a dog door, but there's an opportunity.
Usually with a chance to build, though, right? Wouldn't you say? I mean, usually with a chance to build and to kind of get a quarterback on the roster and things of that nature. I mean, I think, hearing what you hear coming out of Auburn and some of the stuff they're writing about Auburn, a lot of it is like, hey, they got to get a quarterback. And, I think that's one thing you've got to have to beat Georgia. I mean, I know Ole Miss, I say that, and then Missouri gave Georgia a hell of a run without much.
Didn't have a quarterback in 19.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. A little bit of a different team now, I think, though. I mean, just from an offensive standpoint, because Georgia's able to kind of score. But, Missouri didn't have a great one last year, and it was just mainly kind of Georgia shooting themselves in the foot. Georgia goes out there and makes a lot of mistakes. They can lose to anybody. I mean, that's true for that Alabama team that lost to Hugh Freeze. We talk about Kirby Smart's defenses. Alabama turned it over, I know, at least 5 times in one of those games that lost to Ole Miss while Kirby was there.
Yeah, those turnovers, man. That's the thing. And I go back to Kirby saying that the team's not disciplined. And I know it's spring scrimmage number 1, but you don't figure it out. That's how Bama lost at Tennessee, 17.
Hey, and time is a flat circle here, right? We're going back to, telling my little Russ Cole here. But, I mean, quarterback, right? Whoever it's going to be in crunch time and pucker factor and all of those things. Boy, I can't wait to see this segue. Carson Beck, whoever it's going to be, Brock Vandegrift, Gunnar Stockton, having not been in that situation before. Turnovers, I don't know, man. It's probably going to be a little bit more dicey than Georgia fans want to believe. Don't talk all the trash this offseason.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, all the fans hating on them from rival fan bases are going to talk all the trash about Georgia's weak schedule, and then there's going to be one of those games, and they're going to say, Georgia can't even navigate their weak schedule.